Or hopefully the fill-in star, Chris Kelso. Good morning, everybody. Great day here in the studio. Great day to be in Houston, and great day to have Tara Mullins with The Price of Business. Tara, how are you doing?
Good, Chris. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much. You know, you're with Ogilvy PR. Let us know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I joined Ogilvy PR, it'll be 5 years next month, when they launched their Ogilvy Media Influence team, starting out in New York. And it was really a focus that Ogilvy wanted to get behind in making sure that that earned media component didn't get lost as we were shifting to more social and digital platforms. And in that 5 years, we've grown from 5 people to 40 people across North America.
That is amazing. Now, you talked about earned media. Talk a little bit about that for all of our first-time listeners who might not know some of the terminologies we have out there.
Sure. So when we're talking about earned media, that's going to be what you're reading in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal or seeing on the Today Show and Good Morning America. We're working on the stuff that comes with the biggest risk because you're not paying for it, but it also has the biggest rewards for your clients. And these days, that earned component is getting more and more important. Don't tell anyone being connected to an advertising agency, but we're seeing the 30-second spot is really starting to shift to more content, digital, social spaces. So this earned component's really helping to drive the bottom line for businesses because that third-party endorsement that you're getting from a newspaper or a television outlet is really going far for consumers because they know it's not paid for. They know it's legit and people believe it.
Well, and let's back up a little bit. The old days you had from a PR perspective was any publicity was good publicity. But in the more, I guess, conscience-minded individuals, especially with our millennials that are coming up, there's negative publicity that can be bad publicity, by the way. And so it's important to have a good message out there. And as you mentioned, sometimes there's not a direct ROI, but let me tell you, people over a period of time, the more times they hear over and over and over again, it's that belief, it's the understanding, it's the friendliness, and it's the comfort level with understanding who that company is.
Definitely, and I think you hit on something without actually saying the word. Consumers are smart, and they want a company that's genuine and authentic in delivering its message.
No, I would absolutely agree. Because unfortunately today, we know it goes on an international level. We see a lot of companies that come out and that fade away pretty fast, and we see a lot of that hype. And so I think individuals nowadays are a lot more driven towards let's give new companies a chance, but also let's look and see what they're doing, advertising, publicity, PR perspective, and where that third-party endorsement's coming in of other companies that I trust to begin with.
Exactly. We always say that, brand X can always tell me how great they are, but it's not until Jerry at the New York Times tells me that company is great before I'll believe it.
No, I would absolutely agree. So let's talk about some of those steps, though. Let's talk about some steps in engaging your firm or any PR firm for this case, preferably you, obviously, in order to make that line up for an interview for a client or in order to make that PR work for them.
Sure. So I've specialized in media relations from the beginning of my career. I have always enjoyed the thrill of picking up a phone and talking to a journalist about whatever I might be working on client-wise. And I think what's most important is we do have a lot of people that work in media relations that think that email is going to be the best way to get a journalist's attention. I can't even tell you how many times that when you call a journalist these days, because they're getting inundated with so many emails, when you pick up the phone and take the time to have a conversation with them, they really do appreciate it. And because they're getting so many emails, when they miss a good story and you bring it to their attention with a phone call, they really appreciate it, and they're willing to take the 2 minutes to hear you out and give you an answer one way or the other. So the biggest thing that I always recommend to my colleagues, especially those starting out learning about media relations, is really looking to do the research. We have media databases that provide an email and a phone number, but the way that the news rooms are changing and shifting and people taking on more and more beats because staffing is being limited. It's about doing the research, seeing what people are writing about, seeing what topics are in the news. It's a commitment to even reading the news every day in order to successfully line up those interviews. I always go to one example that makes me laugh. Back when Superstorm Sandy hit the East Coast, I had a colleague on the West Coast calling, and he's like, "No one wants to talk to me about America's Recycles Day." And I was like, because people probably can't get to their office right now. So it's important to know what's going on in the news so that you can even be successful in making sure that you can get someone to talk to you about it.
And you said two things that are very important. Number one, and first and foremost, I think this is across the board. We rely too much nowadays on email and texting or other technologies. When guess what? I still tell everybody the tried and true way of getting back to picking up the phone, making a phone call, or developing a relationship face to face is still the most important aspect. And it sounds like it's what you're leveraging right there as well, to be able to understand some of these media outlets and be able to get in front of them and get your client well represented. And on the other side of things, what I thought was pretty interesting is a lot of times we always shut ourselves off to the world, right? So we don't see what's going on. And guess what? Sometimes the bad PR can be the fact is, you don't know what's going on, so you're trying to release something whenever there happens to be a major catastrophe. As you mentioned, Sandy a couple of years back, or the floods, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of different things that can happen. So I guess that's always important to sort of explain that to your client and try to get around those.
Exactly. And even to your point of managing a client, the one thing that we always teach our new staff that comes in is our job is to be that bridge between what the client wants to say and what the news wants to report. It's our job to manage the client and find a narrative that will help get news coverage, because we do have that understanding of what journalists are writing about every day. And to be honest, it's hard to get that feedback over the email. So again, that phone call really does help to hear from journalists what they're focused on, how they can write stories, and just the best way to work with them, because at the end of the day, we're a great resource for them. And if we're going to them with good pitches consistently and not going to them with just the news of the day that we think they should write about, there's a lot of mutual respect that goes back and forth in getting good news out there.
Now, try to quantify in hours spent, I would say, the cost of setting up interviews, for example. And obviously, it's impossible to put any type of price tag on it, but talk about some of the moving parts and what that looks like.
I think that my favorite example is always, I personally do a lot of research in finding out who I want to call for a specific pitch at a specific outlet. And I put a lot of work and effort into the back end. And there are many times that I get very excited. That one phone call is the most effective and efficient phone call I make, because I can sell the story in right away because I did all of the back end research to know who to call versus just starting with, someone in a media directory and then getting passed along the way. I already knew who the right person was. And so I like to think our team has been working very efficiently because they put the time in to do the pre-work.
That's always important. Preparation is one of the most important aspects in making sure you have a successful business. Obviously, you do it there. We are going to be coming up against time on this segment, by the way. Let us know how we can reach you.
Sure. You can reach me via email if you need, tara.mullins@ogilvy.com, or you can reach me at 212-880-5243.
Say that number one more time.
212-880-5243.
That is Tara Mullins. She is Senior Vice President at Ogilvy PR. Tara, thank you very much for being on board today.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you. For all those tuned in to The Price of Business, we're just getting started, but stay tuned. We'll be right back.